Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing something similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago, talking about vintage. Now, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I do dress vintage. I don't do it on this channel for reasons I explained in that video, but I started dressing it about 5 years ago, and it's very much a learning experience, and I'm still learning things years and years later. Now, do remember, I do dress more so the authentic vintage if you want to learn about rockabilly or different subcultures of vintage that isn't particularly authentic. Unfortunately, I don't really believe this video is for you. Choice of drink today is water because, like I said, we're very healthy, and it's in a Chester Zoo cup because my boyfriend took me to Liverpool for my 21st, which is lovely. Sorry if I sound a bit rough, my voice is fucked. I did a COVID test last night, it's not COVID, so I don't know what it is. I feel achy, I feel shit, and it hurts, but people need content, so I'm doing this, alright? You can't be mean to me. Now, the first thing you need to do is decide on what era you want to dress. Now, if you've seen my Instagram account, I don't stick to one era. I find it really difficult to just go, yeah, I like that one, and then just stick to it, because I don't know, I love the fashion of the 40s, I'd say, the most. I love the music of the 50s, and I love society of the 60s, but I can't pick one. And sometimes I like dressing 20s because I just like the particular aesthetic of it. It's just so romantic and beautiful, you know? So the first part is choosing an era, or if you're like me and you want to do multiple, you're gonna have to do research about it. Now, when I say research, I can imagine some people going, oh, that's effort and I can't be bothered. But actually, research can just be like watching a film from the 40s and looking at what people in the background are wearing, you know? It could be watching, for example, if you're into the 40s, you could be watching a war documentary and see what people are wearing. You can just look at magazines from the era. Literally just looking at photos is research. You don't have to read everything if you're not really into reading. I must say though, in some films, obviously depending on the story of the film, some actors or actresses might be dressed more, they'll be more done up than the average civilian, and it really depends on what kind of vintage you want to go for. If you want to go over the top, like kind of like 1950s Dior, new look kind of vibe, might want to look at high fashion magazines. I often find if you want to dress more civilian-y, I guess, looking at home photos or Polaroids of just random people at the time really help. The majority of this for authenticity is research. It 1,000,000% is, because if you want to portray that look and you want other people to see you portraying that look, you have to believe, like, I know what this era looked like, I want to portray this era, and this is how I do it. Now, looking at these bits of research, you can see what clothes they were wearing, what patterns, what colours, what cuts they were wearing, what their hair looked like, what their makeup looked like, because you can get colorised versions of these photos. And I do feel like this is a very important thing to say. You don't have to buy vintage clothes in order to look vintage, you know? I would say about 70% of what I wear on my vintage account is not vintage. It's more likely just, you know, thrifted, which is good for the environment, so that's good. If you know the silhouettes and the cuts of the era, that's all you really need to know. For example, if you see a brown woolen skirt that's just below the knees, it's like kind of like a A-line kind of style, you think, oh, that looks 40s, I could wear that for a 40s look. Because if you know anything about fashion, everything comes back again. For example, now in shops, I've seen so many large detachable frilly collars, which is so 70s. I've seen flares come back. I've seen a lot of like late 60s, early 70s bright prints come back. And you don't have to go to a vintage shop to find things like that. You can literally go to, I would suggest staying away from fast fashion, but if you can't afford any other things, go for it. I wouldn't encourage it, but you know, for necessity of style, you can do that. I do notice sometimes there is exclusivity in some vintage groups, and I do believe it's wrong, and for some people it does put a lot of pressure on them, I don't give a fuck. If I want to dress a certain way, if I want to, you know, I don't know, if I want to wear what I want and people don't like it, they can suck an egg. Remember, it all matters on what the look is and how much money you have. I wouldn't expect someone to pay £80 for a 1950s skirt. I don't. If you want to buy Repro, go for Repro, you know? And another really, really important thing is, and I cannot stress this enough, I know mine off by heart, know your measurements. Know your measurements, because honestly, some vintage shops don't do size 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. They would say the bust and the waist measurement, and if it's tight to the hips, they say the hip measurement. Knowing your measurements is really, really handy, because I've been to vintage shops and just went up to the person working there and say, do you have anything in so and so? And instead of you having to search through everything, they can actually help you. And many times, because I'm very small, they usually keep my kind of stock at the back and they don't really have them out because not a lot of people are my size, so they wouldn't buy them. I mean, for example, my measurements are 32 bust, 22 waist. It's getting to about 21 and a half. I need to gain weight, but I don't know how. And 34 hips. So knowing these 3 measurements will help you so much. Some people may not agree with me on this, but I think the most important thing if you want to come across as authentic is hair. 1,000,000% hair. It's easier for guys, and I'm so jealous of that because they can wake up, get some like Brill cream, go, and then they're done. Us girls, it's a little bit harder. For example, I could wear capris and, I don't know, a round neck shirt with straight hair and it would look like a modern day outfit. If I do my hair in a 1950s wet set, it automatically transforms that outfit into a 1950s looking outfit, you know? Now with hair, I learned how to do it by looking at pin curl patterns, but also YouTube videos. Like, not all your research has to be classical research of books and photos, it can be online. At first I tried pin curls, but my hair is very long and very thick, and pin curls for me are very uncomfortable to sleep in. Thing is, I still own my pin curl clips just in case, but I regularly, if I want to do vintage hair, I use foam rollers, and they're so much more comfortable to sleep in. They're not amazing, but because they're foam, they're a lot more softer than metal clips digging into your head, which is a pain. Now, like I said, you need to research your era. If you want to do 20s, your hair should be about here. If you want to do 30s, it can be a bit lower. 40s, you can get away with quite long hair because of, you know, during the war, not a lot of people could go and get their hair done, so they just grew it out. In the 50s, you could have it to about here upwards. Knowing how the waves are formed are really, really important. For example, if you want to do 20s hair and you want to learn finger waves, you'd have to make sure your hair is curled in a particular way that sends the curls that way, and then that way, and then that way, and then that way. You do learn this as you go along. I do believe hair is the hardest part, but it's the most rewarding part. Like I said, I learnt it online because a lot of people were using foam rollers, and it's so much easier once you get the hang of it. Once you like do your first proper wet set and it comes out like really amazing, you're like, oh, that feels really good. It feels so good. Because like I said, it can utterly transform an entire outfit if your hair is wrong or right, you know? Now, last but not least is perception and the public. If you're like me, I didn't care very much. I remember being like 15, 16, wearing like a bright orange, like mid to late 1960s shift dress and not really giving a shit. And I didn't really care if people looked at me, but I know some people do care about that kind of stuff. Now, you're going to have to get used to, unfortunately, people staring at you. But what you need to remember is that 99% of the time, they're staring at you because it's different and they're interested. Not particularly that they're judging you and they don't like it. They're just doing it out of, ooh, that's different, what's that? Like, for example, me and my boyfriend go out a lot, and I sometimes see like really pretty girls and they have like immaculate style, and I'm like they're fit, they're really fit. I'm not gay, but like, you know, they're like But this is all out of like admiration for how they look, you know what I mean? You do get the odd comment here and there. I dressed vintage whilst going to college, so I was like 16, 17. You get like teenage boys going, oh, you dress like your grandma. I'm like, that's the point. But most of the time when people stop you, it's simply out of curiosity, and a lot of the time, if not all the time, they're extremely nice. I remember there was a point in my life where I owned no jeans, I owned no trainers. I do now, out of convenience for like working and stuff, and I was completely fine with that. I owned no leggings. I would dress vintage every single day, even if I wasn't going out. And to me, that was normal. That's normal to me, you know? And if you truly embrace vintage and you love it that much, it does become your new normal. And it just becomes part of you, and you don't really care anymore, you know? You should never care what anyone else thinks of you. And I've noticed, unfortunately, it's mostly girls, and it's this look. Most of the time, they're just a bit insecure. The reason why people are insecure is because they want to be different themselves, but they can't or won't do it because they're worried of doing it. But if you're out there dressing how you want, doing your makeup how you want, doing your hair how you want, soon enough people just get used to it and go, oh yeah, that's the girl who dresses like my nan. And there's no problem with it. And for some people, although I find the hardest part the hair, some people may find this public aspect the hardest. But just remember, most if not all people are supportive, and the ones who aren't, you shouldn't care about, because you're never going to meet them again. You know, those girls who give you dirty looks, you're not going to see them again. Who cares? So, I hope this video has given anyone some sort of encouragement when it comes to vintage. Don't be scared about how you want to dress. Life is honestly too short. It doesn't matter. Do what you want, you know? But yeah, honestly, if this video helped, I can do more videos about certain eras. I did the 50s a couple of weeks back. I could do it in the 40s, 30s, 20s, 60s if you guys would like to. Hope you guys enjoyed, and goodbye. Cheers.